I'm Maria, 29 years old, and I was a nurse living in Houston. My husband beat me every day for 2 years straight. One day, when I passed out from the injuries, he rushed me to the hospital, pretending I had fallen down the stairs. But he froze, completely froze when the doctor said something that exposed his lie right there in the emergency room. What happened next saved my life, and I'm still shaking as I tell you this story. Even now, 2 years later, the memories of what he did to me, the pain he caused, the fear I lived with every single day, it still haunts me. It still wakes me up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, convinced for just a moment that I'm back in that house, back in that hell. But I need to share this. I need you to hear what happened, because maybe, just maybe, my story will help someone else escape the nightmare I was living in. Before I tell you what the doctor said that made my husband's face go white with fear, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and comment below where you're watching from. Your support means everything to me. It reminds me I'm not alone anymore, that there are people who believe survivors like me. It reminds me that speaking up was the right choice, that my voice matters, that my story matters. Please take a second to do that. I'll wait, thank you. Now, let me take you back to the beginning because you need to understand how I got here. You need to understand that I wasn't always this broken, terrified woman lying in a hospital bed with my face so swollen I couldn't open one eye. There was a time when I smiled freely, when I laughed without fear, when I actually believed in love and happy endings. God, I was so naive, so blind, so stupid. I was a nurse. A damn good one too. I worked in the pediatric ICU at Memorial Hermann Hospital in Houston. I loved my job. I loved taking care of those sick kids, holding their parents' hands when they were scared, being there for families during the worst moments of their lives. I was good at it. I was confident, independent, strong. I had my own apartment, my own car, my own money. I had close friends. We'd go out every Friday night, dancing, laughing, living our lives. I had a great relationship with my parents. I called my mom 3 times a week. I had Sunday dinners with my family. I was happy, I was whole, I was me. I never, ever thought I'd be one of those women. You know the ones I'm talking about. The ones you see on the news with bruised faces and black eyes. The ones you wonder about, why didn't she just leave? Why did she stay? I used to think the same things. I used to judge. I used to believe that if I was ever in that situation, I'd leave immediately. I'd never let a man treat me that way. I was too strong for that. Too smart, too independent. But when you're living it, when you're in the middle of it, everything is different. Everything is complicated and confusing and absolutely terrifying. I met him 4 years ago at a hospital charity event. Marcus Rivera. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and he'd come to the event to network, to schmooze with doctors and nurses. He was handsome, I'm not going to lie about that. Tall, well-dressed, with this smile that could light up a room. And when he approached me at the bar, when he bought me a drink and told me I had the most beautiful eyes he'd ever seen, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt seen. He was charming. God, he was so charming. He asked about my job, and he actually listened to my answers. He laughed at my jokes. He remembered every little detail I told him. When I mentioned I loved sunflowers, he showed up at the hospital the next day with a bouquet of them. When I told him my favorite restaurant was this little Italian place downtown, he made reservations for that Friday night. When I said I'd always wanted to go to the beach but never had time, he planned a weekend trip to Galveston 2 weeks later. He was attentive, romantic, thoughtful. He texted me good morning every single day. He called me during his lunch break just to hear my voice. He told me I was beautiful, that I was special, that he'd never met anyone like me. He made me feel like I was the center of his universe. Everyone loved him. My friends thought he was perfect. My mother was completely charmed by him. My father, who's usually so protective and skeptical of any man I date, shook his hand firmly after meeting him and said, "You've got a good one here, Maria. Don't let him go." Even my colleagues at the hospital, who'd seen me date various men over the years, commented on how different Marcus was, how genuine he seemed, how happy I looked. We dated for a year and a half, and it was like a fairy tale. He proposed on the beach in Galveston, the same place we'd gone on our first trip together. He got down on one knee at sunset, pulled out a ring, and asked me to spend the rest of my life with him. I said yes without hesitation. Of course I said yes. I loved him. I thought I'd found my person, my partner, my forever. We got married 6 months later. It was a beautiful wedding, everything I'd ever dreamed of. I wore my grandmother's wedding dress, altered to fit me perfectly. He wore a black tuxedo and cried when I walked down the aisle. We said our vows in front of 150 people, promising to love each other for better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Those words, God, those words would come back to haunt me, because the worst part came so much sooner than I ever could have imagined. It started 4 months after the wedding. 4 months. That's all it took for the mask to slip, for the real Marcus to emerge from behind that charming, loving facade. I'd come home late from a shift at the hospital. It had been a rough day. We'd lost a patient, a 6-year-old girl with leukemia. I was emotionally drained, exhausted, devastated. I came through the door at 11 p.m., and he was sitting on the couch in the dark, just sitting there waiting for me. "Where were you?" he asked, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Something cold, something dangerous. "At work," I said, confused. "You know I had a shift today. I texted you. Until 11 p.m.? He stood up, and even in the darkness, I could feel the anger radiating off him. "You expect me to believe you were at work until 11 p.m.? Marcus, we lost a patient today. I stayed late to do the paperwork, to talk to the family. I texted you about it." "You're lying." He walked toward me, and I instinctively took a step back. "You were with someone else." "Who is he? Who are you fucking?" "What? No. Marcus, I was at work. Call the hospital if you don't believe me." And that's when it happened. That's when his hand connected with my face for the first time. The slap echoed through our apartment, and I stood there in complete shock, my hand pressed against my burning cheek, unable to process what had just happened. He'd hit me. My husband had hit me. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there staring at him, and he stared back at me, and for a moment, we were both frozen in this horrible moment, where everything had changed and nothing would ever be the same again. Then he started crying, actual tears streaming down his face. He dropped to his knees right there in our living room and grabbed my hands. "Oh my God, Maria. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. Work has been so stressful, and I've been so worried about losing you. And I just snapped. I would never hurt you. You know I love you. Please forgive me. Please. It will never happen again. I promise it will never happen again." And I believed him. God help me. I believed him. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that everyone makes mistakes, that he was under so much pressure at work. I made excuses for him. I blamed myself. Maybe I should have called instead of just texting. Maybe I should have come home earlier. Maybe I'd done something to make him feel insecure without realizing it. The next day, he came home with 3 dozen roses and a diamond bracelet. He took me to my favorite Italian restaurant. He held my hand across the table and told me I was the most important thing in his life, that he'd die without me, that he'd never let anything come between us again, and I smiled. I actually smiled and thanked him for the gifts, for the dinner, for loving me. I covered the bruise on my cheek with makeup and pretended everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. It was never going to be fine again. The second time it happened was 3 weeks later. I'd forgotten to pick up his prescription from the pharmacy. He'd asked me that morning, and I'd gotten busy with errands and completely forgot. Such a simple, stupid thing. But when he realized I hadn't done it, he grabbed me by my hair and slammed me against the refrigerator. I felt the air leave my lungs. I felt the pain explode through my back and shoulders. He held me there, his fist twisted in my hair, his face inches from mine. "You have one job as my wife," he hissed. "One job. To take care of me, to do what I ask. And you can't even do that?" Then he shoved me to the floor and walked away like nothing had happened. I lay there on the kitchen tile, crying, confused, terrified. This wasn't my husband. This wasn't the man I'd married. But it was. He was both men, the charming, loving husband in public, and the monster behind closed doors. After that, it became a pattern, a sick, twisted cycle that I got trapped in. He'd hurt me, then he'd apologize. He'd buy me gifts, be sweet and loving for a few days or maybe a week, and then something would set him off again, and the violence would return. Each time it was worse than the last. Each time I told myself it would be the last time. Each time I was wrong. He started isolating me from my friends. At first, it was subtle. "Do you really need to go out with the girls tonight? I thought we could spend time together. I never see you anymore." Then it became more controlling. "Why are you always texting your friends? Am I not enough for you? Am I not making you happy?" Eventually, he'd fly into a rage whenever I made plans with anyone. "You're choosing them over me, your own husband. What kind of wife does that?" So I stopped making plans. I stopped calling my friends. I stopped going out. It was easier than dealing with his anger, easier than the beatings that would follow if I defied him. My family was next. He'd pick fights right before family dinners, making sure I was too upset or too bruised to go. Call them and tell them you're sick, he'd command. Tell them you have the flu or a migraine or something. So I did. I made excuses. I canceled plans. My mother started calling less frequently, hurt that I kept bailing on family gatherings. I could hear it in her voice, the disappointment, the confusion, the distance growing between us. But what could I tell her? That my husband was beating me? That I was trapped? That I was terrified? I couldn't. I was too ashamed, too embarrassed. How do you admit to your family that you've become that woman, the one you always swore you'd never be? The one who stays with a man who hurts her? I thought I was stronger than that. I thought if I was ever in that situation, I'd leave immediately, call the police, fight back. But when you're living it, when you're in the middle of it, you realize it's not that simple. Nothing is ever that simple. The beatings became more frequent. What started as once every few weeks became once a week, then multiple times a week, then daily. Every single day, he found a reason to hurt me. The house wasn't clean enough. Dinner wasn't ready on time. I'd looked at him the wrong way. I'd said something that annoyed him. I'd breathed too loudly. It didn't matter what I did or didn't do. Nothing was ever right. Nothing was ever good enough. He'd punch me in the stomach where the bruises wouldn't show. He'd pull my hair until I thought he'd rip it from my scalp. He'd twist my arms behind my back until I heard something pop. He'd kick me when I was down on the ground, curled up trying to protect my vital organs. And the whole time, he'd tell me it was my fault, that I deserved it, that if I just listened to him, if I just did what I was supposed to do, he wouldn't have to discipline me. Discipline. That's what he called it. Like I was a child who needed to be taught a lesson, like his violence was somehow justified, somehow my fault. I started wearing long sleeves even in the Houston summer heat, turtlenecks to hide the fingerprints around my neck, sunglasses to cover the black eyes, makeup, so much makeup, layered thick to hide the bruises that painted my skin in shades of purple, blue, yellow, green. I looked in the mirror, and barely recognized myself. I'd lost 30 pounds because I was too anxious to eat. My eyes had this hollow, haunted look. I looked like a ghost. I felt like one, too. Work became impossible. I'd call in sick when I was too bruised to cover it up with makeup. I'd wear long sleeves under my scrubs even though it was against dress code. My supervisor started asking questions. My colleagues started noticing. "Maria, are you okay? You seem different. Is everything all right at home?" And I'd lie. "I'm fine, just tired. Wedding planning was exhausting, you know." Then after the wedding, "Oh, I'm fine, just adjusting to married life." Then later, "I'm fine, just haven't been sleeping well." But I wasn't fine. I was dying inside, piece by piece, day by day. Marcus forced me to quit my job 6 months into the marriage. He said he made enough money as a sales rep, that my place was at home, that a good wife shouldn't be working anyway, but really, he wanted to isolate me completely. Without my job, I had no income. Without income, I had no independence. Without independence, I had no way to leave. He took over all our bank accounts. I had no access to money. He gave me a small allowance for groceries, $100 a week, and I had to bring him receipts for everything I bought. If I was even $1 over, he'd accuse me of stealing from him, and the punishment would be severe. I couldn't buy anything for myself, couldn't save any money, couldn't plan any kind of escape. I was completely trapped, completely under his control, completely at his mercy, and he had none. This went on for 2 years. 2 years of daily abuse, 2 years of living in fear, 2 years of going to bed not knowing if I'd wake up the next morning, 2 years of wishing I wouldn't. There were nights I thought about ending it myself. The pain, the fear, the hopelessness, it was too much. I'd stand in the bathroom with a bottle of pills, thinking how easy it would be to just swallow them all and drift away into nothingness. No more pain, no more fear, no more him. But I couldn't do it. Some small part of me, some tiny spark that he hadn't completely extinguished, held on to the memory of who I used to be, confident, strong, independent Maria who loved her job and her life, held on to the hope that maybe, somehow, I could be that person again, if I could just survive long enough to escape. I tried to leave once, just once. It was after a particularly brutal beating. He'd punched me in the ribs so many times I couldn't breathe without pain shooting through my entire chest. I could barely walk. I waited until he left for work the next morning, and then I packed a small bag with whatever I could carry. I'd been hiding money for months, $1 here, $2 there, change from the grocery allowance. I had $200 saved. It wasn't much, but it was something. I took that bag and that money, and I went to a motel 30 miles outside of Houston. I paid cash for 3 nights. I felt this surge of hope, of freedom, of possibility. I'd done it. I'd finally escaped. I was free. But he found me. I don't know how. Maybe he tracked my phone, maybe he followed me, maybe he just knew me well enough to guess where I'd go. But 6 hours later, there was a knock on my motel room door. I thought it was housekeeping. I opened it without checking first. And there he was. The look on his face, I'll never forget it. Pure rage mixed with this possessive madness. He didn't say a word. He just grabbed me by my hair and dragged me out of that motel room, across the parking lot, and threw me into his car. I was screaming, fighting, begging for help, but no one came. No one stopped him. No one called the police. He drove me back home in complete silence. When we got inside, he locked the door behind us and beat me worse than he ever had before. He hit me with closed fists, over and over, screaming at me the whole time. You belong to me. You're my wife. You have no right to leave. If you ever try to run again, I will kill you. Do you understand me? I will fucking kill you. And I believed him. I absolutely believed him, because in that moment, I saw it in his eyes he was capable of murder. He would kill me if I tried to leave again. After that beating, he stood over me while I lay on the floor bleeding and crying, and he said, "You're nothing without me. No one else would want you. Look at you. You're pathetic, weak, worthless. Your family doesn't even call you anymore. Your friends have forgotten about you. I'm all you have. Do you understand me? I am all you have." And in that moment, I believed that, too. I believed I was trapped forever, that this was my life now, that I'd made my choice when I married him, and now I had to live with the consequences. I stopped thinking about leaving. I stopped hoping for anything better. I just survived, day by day, hour by hour, trying not to do anything that would set him off. But of course, everything set him off. I was walking on eggshells in my own home, and those eggshells were always cracking beneath my feet. He'd threaten me constantly. "If you tell anyone, I'll say you're crazy. No one will believe you. You have no proof. It's your word against mine, and I'm a successful sales rep with a great reputation. You're just a hysterical woman who can't handle her marriage." And he was right. I had no proof. He was careful. He hurt me where it wouldn't show, or where I could easily cover it up with clothes or makeup. He was smart about it, calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. The isolation was complete. I had no job, no money, no friends, no family support. I was alone in that house with him, day after day, night after night, just waiting for the next beating, the next explosion of rage, the next moment of terror. And then came that Tuesday, the day that changed everything, the day referenced in the title you clicked on, the day I passed out, the day he took me to the hospital, the day his lie started to unravel. It was evening. I'd made his favorite dinner pot roast with potatoes and carrots. I'd set the table nicely. I had his beer waiting. I'd cleaned the house top to bottom. I'd done everything right, everything exactly the way he liked it. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could avoid his anger that night if everything was perfect. But nothing was ever perfect enough for him. He took one bite of the pot roast and his face changed. I knew that look. I'd seen it 1,000 times before, that look that meant pain was coming. "This is garbage," he said, his voice going cold and flat. "What did you do to it?" I cooked it exactly how you like it," I stammered, my heart already racing with fear. "The same way I always do, medium, with—" "It's overcooked," he interrupted. "It's dry. It's disgusting." He stood up from the table, and I instinctively backed away. "You can't do anything right, can you? You're completely useless." "I'm sorry. I can make something else. I can." That's when he grabbed me by the throat. His hand closed around my neck and he slammed me backward against the wall. My head hit the corner of the cabinet and I saw stars. Pain exploded through my skull. I couldn't breathe. His hand was squeezing tighter and tighter, cutting off my air completely. "I work all day to provide for you," he growled, his face inches from mine, his breath hot on my skin. "And this is the thanks I get? A ruined dinner?" He threw me to the floor and I gasped for air, clutching my throat. But he wasn't done. He started kicking me, my ribs, my back, my legs, my stomach. I curled into a ball, trying to protect my vital organs, crying and begging him to stop, but he didn't stop. He never stopped until he was done, until he'd gotten all the rage out of his system. I heard something crack in my chest, felt something break. The pain was blinding, all-consuming. I couldn't breathe without agony shooting through my entire torso. Then he pulled me up by my hair, yanking me to my feet, and he started punching me in the face. I felt my nose break, felt blood pouring down my face, filling my mouth with that metallic taste. One punch connected with my cheekbone, and I felt it shatter. Another hit my temple, and the world started spinning, tilting, going sideways. I heard him screaming at me, but his voice sounded far away, like I was underwater. "You worthless piece of trash. You ruin everything. I should have never married you." Another punch. Another explosion of pain. And then the world started going dark around the edges. My vision was blurring, narrowing to a tunnel. My legs wouldn't hold me up anymore. I felt myself falling, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't catch myself. And then nothing. Everything went black. I didn't feel myself hit the floor. I didn't feel anything. I just disappeared into the darkness. I don't know how long I was unconscious. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. But when I started to come to, I wasn't on the kitchen floor anymore. I was moving, jostling, being bounced around. I tried to open my eyes, but one of them was completely swollen shut. Through my one working eye, I could barely make out that I was in a car, his car, and he was driving. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't work properly. My jaw felt wrong, loose, broken maybe. Everything hurt. Every breath sent sharp, stabbing pains through my chest where my ribs were cracked or broken. I could taste blood. So much blood. I must have made some sound though, some groan or whimper, because he glanced back at me in the rearview mirror. I realized I was in the back seat, lying down, unable to sit up. "Stay with me," he said, and for a moment, he actually sounded concerned, worried. But then I heard what he said next, and I realized this wasn't about me. This was never about me. This was about him covering his tracks, protecting himself. Okay, I've got this," he was muttering to himself, talking himself through it. "She fell down the stairs. That's it. Simple. She fell down the stairs and hit her head. I came home from work and found her unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. I'm a concerned husband rushing his wife to the hospital. That's the story. She fell down the stairs. She fell down the stairs." He kept repeating it over and over, practicing his lie. Rehearsing it, making sure he had all the details right, making sure it sounded believable. And I lay there in the back seat, drifting in and out of consciousness, listening to him construct the narrative that would explain away my injuries, that would let him escape responsibility for what he'd done. Through the haze of pain and confusion, I felt something, a tiny spark, hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. He was taking me to the hospital. I'd be around other people, doctors, nurses, my people. I used to be one of them. People who might ask questions, people who might see through his lie, people who might help me. This could be my chance, maybe my only chance. But that hope was immediately crushed by fear. What if they didn't believe me? What if they believed him instead? He was right there with me. He'd control what I said, who I talked to. He'd be watching me, monitoring every word. And even if I did manage to tell someone the truth, what then? He'd said he'd kill me if I ever tried to leave, if I ever told anyone. What would he do if I exposed him? If I got him in trouble? I must have passed out again because the next thing I knew, there were bright lights and voices and people moving around me. The emergency room. I was on a gurney being wheeled down a hallway, fluorescent lights passing overhead like strobes. I tried to focus, tried to understand what was happening, but everything was so confusing, so painful, so overwhelming. I heard his voice, loud and clear, playing the role of concerned husband perfectly. "Please, you have to help her. I came home from work and found her at the bottom of the stairs. There was blood everywhere. Please, she's my wife, please help her." Such a good performance. Such genuine sounding panic and worry. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't just lived through what really happened, I would have believed him myself. He sounded like a man desperately worried about his wife, not a man who'd just beaten her unconscious. They transferred me to a bed in the ER. A nurse started checking my vitals, blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen levels. A doctor came in and started examining me, gently touching my face, my ribs, asking me questions I couldn't quite process. And he was right there beside me, holding my hand, stroking my hair so gently. Nothing like the way he'd yanked it earlier when he was punching me in the face. "Everything will be okay, baby," he said softly, his voice full of fake concern. "These doctors are going to take good care of you. "You're safe now. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." That's what I was afraid of. That he wasn't going anywhere. That he'd be right there next to me, controlling the narrative, making sure I didn't say anything that would expose him. The doctor started asking questions. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? Can you hear me?" I opened my mouth. I looked at my husband standing right there, his hand gripping mine, his eyes locked on my face, and even though his expression looked concerned and loving to everyone else in that room, I could see the warning in his gaze. I could read the message clearly. "Don't you dare, don't you say a word." Before I could respond, he jumped in, his voice shaking with what sounded like genuine emotion. "She fell down the stairs. I wasn't home when it happened. I was at work. But when I got home, she was unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. We have hardwood stairs and she must have slipped or tripped or something. There was so much blood, I was so scared." The doctor nodded, making notes on his tablet. But the nurse, an older woman, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and graying hair, kept looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Concern? Suspicion? I couldn't tell. "Ma'am," the nurse said gently, addressing me directly. "Can you tell us in your own words what happened?" I looked at her, then at him, then back at her. I wanted to scream the truth. I wanted to tell them everything about the 2 years of daily beatings, about the threats, about the time I tried to leave and he found me and beat me worse than ever. I wanted to tell them that he'd just beaten me unconscious in our kitchen and then brought me here to cover his tracks. But the fear was too strong. He was right there, listening to every word I might say. If I told the truth, if I exposed him, what would happen when we went home? Because I would have to go home with him eventually, wouldn't I? And then what? He'd said he'd kill me if I ever told anyone. He'd made that promise very clear. I don't remember," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I remember being at the top of the stairs and then, nothing." He squeezed my hand, and to anyone watching, it would have looked like a gesture of comfort and support, but I felt how hard he was squeezing, the pressure of his fingers, the pain he was intentionally causing. Another warning. "Good girl, keep lying." "It's okay, baby," he said softly, playing his part perfectly. "You're safe now. These doctors are going to take good care of you. Everything's going to be fine." The doctor ordered X-rays and a CT scan. "We need to check for fractures and internal bleeding. You're experiencing quite a bit of swelling and bruising. Can you tell me where you're feeling the most pain?" "Everywhere," I managed to say. "Everything hurts." They needed to cut off my shirt to examine me properly. The nurse took scissors and carefully cut through the fabric, peeling it away from my body, and that's when I saw her expression change completely. Her eyes widened slightly, and she glanced at the doctor with a look that I recognized, even through my haze of pain, the look medical professionals give each other when they see something concerning, something that doesn't add up, because my torso was completely covered in bruises, not just fresh ones from tonight, but old ones too, purple bruises from this week, yellow bruises from last week, green bruises from 2 weeks ago, brown bruises from a month ago. A complete timeline of abuse painted across my skin in various shades of trauma. The doctor's demeanor changed too. He looked at the bruises, really looked at them. Then he looked at my husband, then at the nurse, then back at the bruises. I saw him processing, analyzing, putting the pieces together. "These bruises," the doctor said carefully, his voice professional but with an edge to it, "they appear to be in various stages of healing. Some of these are quite old." My husband didn't miss a beat. He laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, she's always been clumsy. Ever since we got married, she's always bumping into things, tripping over stuff. She bruises really easily too. I'm always telling her to be more careful, but you know how it is." He smiled at the nurse like they were sharing some inside joke about silly, accident-prone women. But the nurse wasn't smiling, and neither was the doctor. They exchanged another look, and I saw something pass between them, an understanding, a shared knowledge, a decision being made. "We're going to take you for those scans now," the nurse said to me. Then she turned to my husband, her voice firm, professional, allowing no argument. "Sir, you'll need to wait here. Hospital policy." "I want to go with her," he protested, his mask starting to slip just slightly. "She's my wife. She needs me with her." "Hospital policy," the nurse repeated, even more firmly this time. "You can wait in the family waiting room. We'll come get you when she's back from radiology." I saw frustration flash across his face, saw his jaw clench, saw his hands ball into fists. But he couldn't argue without looking suspicious, without drawing attention to himself. He had to play the role of concerned husband, and a concerned husband would cooperate with hospital staff. "Okay," he said, forcing a smile. "Okay, I'll wait. Baby, I'll be right here when you get back. I'm not going anywhere. I love you." Those words, "I'm not going anywhere," sent a chill through me despite the pain, despite the swelling, despite everything, because that was the problem. He wasn't going anywhere. He'd be right there waiting when I got back. And eventually, we'd go home together, and then, they wheeled me away from the ER, down a long corridor toward the radiology department. The nurse stayed with me the whole time, walking beside my gurney. And once we were away from the ER, away from him, away from his ears and his eyes and his control, she leaned down close to me. "Honey," she said quietly, her voice gentle but urgent, "those bruises didn't come from falling down the stairs. I've been a nurse for 25 years. I know what abuse looks like. I've seen it too many times. And I'm seeing it right now." Tears started streaming down my face. Not from physical pain this time, but from something else, relief, maybe, or fear, or hope, or all of those things tangled together. Someone saw, someone knew, someone believed me without me even having to say anything. "It's okay," she continued, her hand gently touching my shoulder. "You're safe right now. He can't get to you here. But I need you to tell me the truth. Did he do this to you?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to scream the truth at the top of my lungs, but the fear was still there, paralyzing me, choking me more effectively than his hand had choked me earlier. "I can't," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I can't. He'll kill me. You don't understand. If I say anything, if I tell anyone, he'll kill me. He's promised me that, multiple times, and I believe him. I know he'll do it." "We won't let that happen," she said firmly. "We have security. We have resources. We have people whose entire job is to protect women in your situation. But you have to tell the truth. You have to let us help you." Before I could respond, we reached the radiology department. The X-ray technician was waiting, and the conversation had to stop. They took images of my head, my face, my chest, my ribs, then they took me for a CT scan, sliding me into that big machine while I lay there, trying not to cry, trying not to scream, trying not to completely fall apart. The whole time, my mind was racing. Should I tell them? Could I tell them? What would happen if I did? What would happen if I didn't? If I went home with him tonight after everything that had happened, would I even survive another week, another day? When they brought me back to the ER, I was in a different room than before, a private room instead of the open bay where I'd been initially. And of course, he was there, standing by the bed, that fake concerned look, still plastered on his face, ready to resume his performance. "How is she?" he asked the nurse. "What did the tests show? Is she going to be okay?" "The doctor will be in shortly to discuss the results," the nurse said coolly. There was something in her tone, something that made it clear she wasn't buying his act, that she saw right through him. The minutes that followed felt like hours. He held my hand, he stroked my hair, he played his part perfectly, the devoted husband, the worried spouse. But every few seconds, when he was sure no one was looking, he'd lean in close to my ear and whisper threats. "Remember what I told you, you fell down the stairs, that's all, that's the only story. You say anything different, you even hint at anything else, and you know what will happen. I'll make what I did tonight look like nothing. Do you understand me, do you?" I nodded slightly, barely a movement, but enough to satisfy him. What choice did I have? Then the doctor came back in, holding his tablet with my test results. And this is where everything changed. This is where my nightmare took a turn I never could have anticipated. This is the moment from the thumbnail. The moment that saved my life. The doctor looked at me first, then at my husband, then back at me. His expression was serious, professional, determined, and there was something else there too, anger maybe, or disgust, barely concealed beneath his professional demeanor. "Ma'am," he said, addressing me directly, his voice clear and firm, "the results of your CT scan and X-rays show several concerning injuries." I felt my husband tense beside me, his hand tightened on mine. The doctor continued, his eyes never leaving my face. "You have a concussion, your nose is broken, your left cheekbone is fractured, you have 3 broken ribs on your right side, and there's evidence of previous fractures to your ribs, to your left arm, to your jaw that healed improperly." He paused. In that pause, the room seemed to hold its breath. I could feel my husband beside me, could feel him starting to panic, starting to realize that his story was about to fall apart. "Ma'am," the doctor said, and his voice was steel now, These injuries show a clear, unmistakable pattern of repeated physical trauma occurring over an extended period of time. The bruising on your body, which is in various stages of healing, suggests multiple violent incidents occurring over many weeks, possibly months, or even years. He paused again, and this time he looked directly at my husband, his gaze hard and unflinching. These injuries are not consistent with a fall down the stairs. I watched my husband's face, and that's when it happened. He froze. Completely, utterly froze. All the color drained from his face, leaving him pale, almost gray. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. No lies. No excuses, no charm. For the first time since I'd met him, Marcus Rivera had absolutely no response. The doctor wasn't done. He turned back to me, his voice gentler now but still firm. "Ma'am, these are clear indicators of ongoing domestic violence. The injury patterns are unmistakable to any medical professional trained in trauma assessment. I've already contacted hospital security and social services, and I've called the police. I need to speak with you alone, without your husband present. Right now." "Wait," my husband started, his voice rising, that charming mask finally cracking, finally revealing the monster underneath. "Wait, just a minute. You can't." But the doctor cut him off, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave this room immediately. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is me telling you to leave. Now." "She's my wife," Marcus shouted, and there it was, the rage I knew so well, the violence barely contained beneath the surface. "You can't keep me from my wife. This is ridiculous." She fell down the stairs. "Tell them, Maria. Tell them what happened. Tell them you're just clumsy. Tell them." "Sir," a new voice said, and I turned to see two security guards standing in the doorway. They must have been waiting just outside, ready for this exact moment. "You need to leave this room now." "I'm not leaving without my wife," he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "Then we'll escort you out and contact the police," one of the security guards said calmly. "Your choice, sir. Leave voluntarily, or leave in handcuffs, but you are leaving." He stared at me for a long moment. I saw him calculating, trying to figure out his next move, trying to find a way to regain control of the situation. Then he seemed to make a decision. He'd leave. But he'd make damn sure I knew this wasn't over, that I'd pay for this later. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth. "Fine, I'll go." "But Maria." He leaned in close, and even with the doctor and nurses and security guards right there, he managed to whisper one last threat. "Remember who you belong to. Remember what I told you. I'll be waiting for you, right outside. I'll be waiting." The security guards escorted him out, each one holding one of his arms, and for the first time in 2 years, I was in a room without him, without his presence, without his control, without his violence. And I completely fell apart. All the tears I'd been holding back, all the fear, all the pain, all the trauma of the past 2 years, it came pouring out of me in great, heaving sobs that made my broken ribs scream in protest, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop crying. My whole body shook with the force of it, and even though every sob sent waves of pain through my chest, I couldn't control it. The nurse was there immediately, holding my hand, stroking my hair gently, actually gently, not like his fake gentleness that was always laced with threat. "It's okay, honey. It's okay. You're safe now. He can't hurt you here. You're safe." The doctor pulled up a chair beside my bed and waited patiently for me to calm down enough to speak. It took several minutes, maybe longer. Time felt strange, elastic, like it was moving too fast and too slow at the same time. When my sobs finally quieted to hiccups and gasps, when I could breathe again without completely breaking down, the doctor leaned forward. His voice was gentle but serious. "Maria, I need you to tell me the truth. Did your husband do this to you?" And finally I said the words I'd been too terrified to say for 2 years. The words that had been stuck in my throat, choking me, silencing me. Yes. That one word opened the floodgates. Once I started talking, I couldn't stop. The whole story came pouring out: the first slap 4 months after the wedding, how it escalated from slaps to punches to daily beatings, how he isolated me from my friends and family, how he made me quit my job, how he controlled all the money, how he threatened to kill me if I ever left or told anyone, how I tried to leave once, and he found me and beat me worse than ever, how tonight he'd beaten me unconscious over pot roast, and then brought me here lying about what happened. I told them everything. Every horrible, shameful, painful detail, and they listened. The doctor listened, the nurse listened. They didn't interrupt, they didn't judge. They didn't ask me why I didn't leave sooner or why I stayed, they just listened, and they believed me. A domestic violence advocate arrived about 20 minutes later. Her name was Jennifer, and she had kind eyes and a gentle voice, and she sat with me and explained my options, my rights, what resources were available to me. She told me I didn't have to go home with him, that I could file a police report right now, that there were safe places I could go, shelters specifically for women escaping domestic violence. But he's outside, I said, panic rising in my chest again. He said he's waiting for me. He meant it. If I try to leave, if I walk out those doors, he won't get near you, Jennifer interrupted firmly. Security is already aware of the situation. The police are on their way. And even if he tries to approach you, even if he tries to come back into this hospital, he'll be arrested immediately for violating hospital security protocols. You don't have to see him. You don't have to go anywhere with him. You're safe. You don't understand, I insisted, feeling the fear overwhelming me again. You don't know what he's capable of. He told me if I ever told anyone, if I ever tried to leave, he'd kill me. And he meant it. I know he did. I've seen it in his eyes. He'll kill me. I do understand, Jennifer said softly, and something in her voice made me look at her more closely. I was where you are 15 years ago. My ex-husband put me in the hospital just like yours did to you. 3 broken ribs, fractured skull, internal bleeding, and just like you, I was terrified to speak up, terrified he'd kill me. But I did speak up, and I survived. I got out, I rebuilt my life, and you will too, Maria. You will survive this, but you have to let us help you. A police officer arrived about 15 minutes later. Detective Sarah Rodriguez, a woman in her early 40s with short dark hair and intelligent eyes that had clearly seen too much pain in her career. She sat down beside my bed and gently, carefully, took my statement. She asked me to tell her everything, from the beginning, and I did. I told her the whole story again, every detail I could remember. She photographed all my injuries, with a professional camera, my face, my torso, my arms, my legs, every bruise and cut and mark. She documented everything with clinical precision, explaining that these photos would serve as evidence, that the medical records would serve as evidence, that my testimony would serve as evidence. Maria, she said when I finished giving my statement, we have more than enough evidence to arrest him right now. Assault and battery at minimum, with domestic violence enhancements. More charges will likely follow as we investigate further. Is that what you want? Do you want us to press charges? What did I want? For 2 years, I hadn't been allowed to want anything. My wants, my needs, my desires, my very thoughts, all of it had been controlled by him. And now, someone was asking me what I wanted. Someone was giving me a choice. Yes, I said, and my voice was stronger than I'd heard it in years. Yes, I want him arrested. I want him charged. I want him to pay for what he did to me. I want him to never be able to hurt me again. I want him in prison where he belongs. Then that's exactly what's going to happen, Detective Rodriguez said firmly. He's still in the hospital waiting room. My officers are going to take him into custody right now. We're also going to be issuing an emergency protective order, which means he legally cannot come near you, cannot contact you in any way, cannot attempt to communicate with you. If he violates that order even once, he goes straight to jail. Do you understand? I nodded, feeling something I hadn't felt in 2 years: hope, real, solid, tangible hope. They asked if I had anywhere safe to go. I told them about my parents, who I hadn't really talked to in over a year because he'd isolated me from them so effectively. Jennifer offered to call them for me, to explain the situation. They're going to be so disappointed in me, I said, fresh tears streaming down my face. They're going to think I'm so stupid for staying with him, for letting this happen to me, for not telling them sooner. They're not going to think that, Jennifer said gently but firmly. They're going to be relieved that you're alive. They're going to be grateful that you're finally getting help. They're going to want to support you. Trust me on this. She was right. When my mother answered the phone and Jennifer explained what had happened, I heard my mother scream, not in anger at me, but in horror at what I'd been living through, in anguish that her daughter had been suffering and she hadn't known. Within 25 minutes, both my parents were at the hospital, rushing into my private room with tears streaming down their faces. My mother grabbed my hand so gently, like she was afraid I might shatter into a million pieces. "Oh, baby," she sobbed. "Oh, my baby girl. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you say something? We could have helped you. We could have gotten you out of there." I couldn't. I whispered, my voice breaking. I was so scared, Mama. And I was so ashamed. I didn't want you to know that I'd let this happen to me. I didn't want you to think I was weak or stupid or... You didn't let anything happen, my father interrupted, his voice thick with emotion and rage. This is not your fault, Maria. None of this is your fault. He did this. That monster did this to you. He's the one who should be ashamed, not you. Never you. They stayed with me while I finished giving my statement to Detective Rodriguez. They were there when she came back half an hour later to tell me that Marcus had been arrested in the hospital parking lot. He'd actually tried to run when he saw the police approaching, which added evading arrest to his list of charges. They'd searched his phone and found text messages threats he'd sent me over the past 2 years, messages to his friends where he actually bragged about keeping his wife in line, and even photos he'd taken of me after some of the worst beatings, like trophies of his violence. Evidence. So much evidence that there was no way he could talk his way out of this, no way he could charm his way to freedom. I was admitted to the hospital overnight for observation because of the concussion. My parents stayed with me the entire time, my mother holding my hand while I drifted in and out of sleep, plagued by nightmares of him coming back, of him finding me, of him making good on his threats to kill me. But he didn't come back. He couldn't. He was in jail, and for the first time in 2 years, I slept without being terrified of what the next day would bring. The next morning, Jennifer returned with information about a domestic violence shelter where I could stay. My parents wanted me to come home with them, but Jennifer explained that it might not be safe. He knew where they lived, and even with the protective order, desperate abusers sometimes violated those orders with deadly consequences. The shelter was confidential, secure, staffed with people trained specifically to help survivors like me. It had counselors, legal advocates, resources to help me rebuild my life from the ground up. My parents understood. They were scared for me, desperate to protect me, but they understood. We decided together that I would go to the shelter once I was discharged from the hospital. Over the next few weeks, everything happened so fast it felt like a blur. The district attorney's office charged Marcus with multiple counts of assault and battery, domestic violence with aggravating circumstances, and false imprisonment. The evidence against him was overwhelming, my medical records showing a pattern of injuries over 2 years, the photographs of my bruises in various stages of healing, the statements from the ER doctor and nurse who'd seen through his lies, the texts on his phone, the photos he'd kept like sick souvenirs. His bail was set at $500,000. I lived in terror every single day that he'd somehow post it, that he'd get out, that he'd find me, that he'd kill me just like he'd promised. But he didn't make bail. His own parents, when they learned the full extent of what their son had done, refused to help him. His friends distanced themselves. His employer fired him. He was alone, powerless, and that reality was finally starting to sink in for him. I started therapy at the shelter twice a week at first, then 3 times a week. My therapist, Dr. Lisa Chen, specialized in trauma and PTSD. She helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't just abuse, it was torture. Systematic, calculated, intentional torture, designed to break me down, to destroy my sense of self, to make me believe I was worthless and deserved the violence. You survived, she told me during one of our early sessions. Do you understand how incredibly strong you had to be to survive what you went through? Most people can't even imagine enduring that level of sustained trauma for 2 years. But you did. You survived. And now you get to heal. Now you get to reclaim your life. Now you get to become yourself again. But healing was so much harder than I ever imagined. The physical injuries healed relatively quickly. My ribs mended over 6 weeks, my nose was set properly, the bruises faded from my skin, but the psychological damage, the trauma, the fear that ran so much deeper. I had nightmares every single night. Vivid, terrifying dreams where I was back in that house, back under his control, back in that hell. I'd wake up screaming, convinced he was standing over me with his fist raised. Panic attacks hit me multiple times a day. I'd hear footsteps behind me, and my heart would start racing. I'd flinch if someone moved too quickly near me. I couldn't be in a room with the door closed. I couldn't stand having my back to a doorway. I was constantly on alert, constantly scanning for danger, constantly waiting for him to appear and make good on his threat to kill me. The other women at the shelter understood in a way no one else could. They'd lived through their own versions of hell, their own nightmares of violence and control and terror. We'd sit together in the common room at night, sharing our stories, crying together, supporting each other, reminding each other that we'd survived, that we were strong, that we deserved better. There was no judgment there. No one asked why we stayed or why we didn't leave sooner, or what we did to provoke the violence. We all knew those questions were bullshit, that abuse is never the victim's fault, that leaving is the most dangerous time, that the reasons we stayed were complex and valid, and deeply personal. I reconnected with my family during those months at the shelter. They visited as often as they were allowed, bringing me clothes and toiletries and books and love. My mother cried every time she saw me, apologizing over and over for not realizing what was happening, for not pushing harder when I'd canceled family dinners or made excuses about why I couldn't visit. "You have nothing to apologize for, Mom," I told her again and again. He was good at hiding it. He isolated me deliberately, systematically, and I was good at pretending everything was fine because I was terrified of what would happen if anyone knew the truth. This wasn't your fault, it was his, only his. My father was different. He didn't cry in front of me, but I could see the rage and pain in his eyes every time he looked at my healing face. "I want 5 minutes alone with him," he'd say, his hands clenching into fists. "Just 5 minutes, that's all I need." "Dad, no, he's not worth it, he's going to prison." "That's justice, that's what matters." The trial was scheduled for 8 months after his arrest. 8 long months of waiting, of preparing, of reliving every horrible moment so I could testify against him in court. The prosecutor, Jennifer Hayes, different Jennifer than the advocate, but just as fierce, met with me multiple times to prepare me for what to expect. "He's going to have a defense attorney," she warned me. "That attorney's job is to get him acquitted or get the charges reduced. They're going to try to discredit you, to make it seem like you're lying or exaggerating. They might bring up your mental health, your emotional state, your history. They might try to paint you as unstable or vindictive or a gold digger looking for money. Are you prepared for that?" Was I prepared? I didn't know. But I knew I had to do this. I had to face him in court. I had to tell my story in front of a jury, not just for me, but for every other woman suffering in silence, for every victim too afraid to speak up, for every survivor who needed to know that justice was possible. "I'm ready," I said, even though I wasn't sure I was. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll tell them everything. I won't let him get away with what he did to me." And now, here I am. 2 years after that horrible night, when he beat me unconscious over pot roast. 2 years after he rushed me to the hospital and tried to lie his way out of what he'd done. 2 years after that doctor looked me in the eye and told me what I already knew but was too terrified to admit, that I was being abused, that it wasn't my fault, that I deserved help. Marcus was convicted on all charges. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before finding him guilty of 3 counts of aggravated assault and battery, 2 counts of domestic violence with severe bodily injury, and 1 count of false imprisonment. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison with no possibility of parole for at least 8 years. He'll have to register as a violent offender when he's eventually released. There's a permanent restraining order that will follow him for the rest of his life. 12 years. It seems like both too much, and not nearly enough. No amount of prison time can give me back the 2 years he stole from me. No sentence can erase the trauma, the nightmares, the fear that still lives in my body. But it's something. It's accountability. It's justice. It's him finally facing consequences for what he did. I'm living in a new city now, Austin, far enough from Houston that I don't constantly look over my shoulder. I changed my name legally, not just going back to my maiden name but choosing an entirely new last name, a fresh start, a new identity untethered from him and his violence. I have an apartment that's small but mine. I picked out every piece of furniture. I painted the walls colors I like. I hung pictures that make me smile. Every single decision is mine and mine alone, and that freedom is everything. I went back to nursing after about 14 months. It was terrifying at first, walking back into a hospital, being around patients and doctors and the smell of antiseptic and all those memories, but it was also healing. Those patients didn't see me as a victim. They just saw me as their nurse, someone who cared about them, someone who was there to help them heal. And helping them heal helped me heal too. I volunteer at the domestic violence shelter where I stayed. I help other survivors, share my story when it might give someone else the courage to leave, to speak up, to save themselves. I've become an advocate, speaking at schools and community centers about the warning signs of abuse, about how to help someone who might be trapped in a violent relationship. I still see Dr. Chen every other week. The trauma doesn't just disappear, you know. It's something I'll probably deal with for the rest of my life. But I have tools now to manage it. I have coping mechanisms. I have a support system. I have hope. He's still in prison. I know because I signed up for victim notification services. I get alerts about his status, about any hearings, about when he might be eligible for parole. As of now, he has 6 more years minimum before he can even apply for parole. 6 more years where I don't have to worry about him showing up at my door. But even if he gets out eventually, even if that day comes, I'm not afraid anymore. Not like I was, because I know my worth now. I know my strength. I know that I survived the worst thing I could imagine, and I came out the other side. Not unchanged. I'll never be the same person I was before him, but alive, healing, growing, thriving, and that's what I want you to understand. If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, if you're being hurt by someone who claims to love you, if you're making excuses for their behavior, if you're isolated and controlled and afraid, if you're telling yourself it's not that bad or that you're overreacting or that you deserve it or that no one will believe you, please hear me. You don't deserve it. You never ever deserved it. It is that bad. You're not overreacting, and people will believe you. I promise you, people will believe you. I know how terrifying it is to speak up. I know how impossible leaving seems. I know the fear that paralyzes you every time you think about telling someone. I know the shame that silences you. I know the hopelessness that convinces you there's no way out, that this is just your life now, that you're trapped forever. I know all of it because I lived it. For 2 years, I lived in that hell. And I'm telling you there's a way out. There are people who will help you, resources available. Shelters specifically designed to keep you safe. Advocates whose entire job is to help survivors like us. Police officers trained in domestic violence. Doctors and nurses who know the signs and will ask the questions. That ER doctor who saw through Marcus's lie. He saved my life. By refusing to look away, by asking the hard questions, by following protocol even though it would have been easier to just accept the story we were giving him. By trusting his training and his instincts. By calling security and social services and the police. That nurse who whispered to me in the hallway, she gave me permission to tell the truth. She let me know that someone saw me, really saw me, and knew what was happening. Jennifer, the domestic violence advocate who sat with me in that hospital room, she showed me that there was life after abuse, that healing was possible, that I wasn't alone. These people exist in your community too. They're waiting to help you, but you have to take that first terrifying step. You have to reach out, you have to ask for help, you have to tell someone what's happening to you. I'm not going to lie and tell you it's easy. It's not. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Walking away from an abuser, especially one you loved or still love, is agonizing. The healing process is long and painful and exhausting. There will be days when you want to give up, when the trauma feels too heavy, when you wonder if it was worth it, but it is worth it. God, it's so worth it, to wake up in the morning without fear, to go through your day without walking on eggshells, to make your own decisions about what to wear, what to eat, where to go, who to see, to spend time with people you love without needing permission, to have your own money, your own space, your own life. That freedom is worth every difficult moment of the healing process. If you need help right now, if you're in immediate danger, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can also text START to 88788. These services are free, confidential, and available 24/7. They can help you create a safety plan, find resources in your area, and escape safely. If you're not in immediate danger but you're being abused, start documenting everything. Take photos of injuries. Keep a journal of incidents. Save threatening texts or emails. Tell someone you trust what's happening. Open a separate bank account if you can, and start saving money, even if it's just a few dollars at a time. These things will help you later when you're ready to leave, when you're ready to press charges. Create a safety plan. Know where you'll go if you need to leave quickly. Keep important documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport, any legal papers, somewhere you can grab them easily. Have a bag packed with clothes and essentials hidden somewhere he won't find it. Have a code word you can text to a trusted friend or family member that means, I need help right now. And know this: you can leave, you can survive, you can heal. I'm living proof of that. 2 years ago, I was convinced I'd never escape. I thought I'd either die at his hands or spend the rest of my life in that prison of fear and violence. I couldn't imagine a future without him, without the abuse, without the constant terror. But here I am, living in a beautiful apartment in Austin, working as a nurse again, helping people, doing what I love, having coffee with friends on weekends, going to therapy and processing my trauma at my own pace, dating someone kind and gentle who would never dream of raising a hand to me, building a life that's entirely, completely, beautifully my own. Yes, I have scars. Yes, I have triggers. Yes, I sometimes wake up from nightmares where I'm back in that house, back in that hell, back under his control, but those moments are becoming less frequent. The healing is happening. Slowly, painfully, but it's happening. And the most important thing I've learned through all of this is that I'm stronger than I ever knew. Every single survivor of abuse is incredibly strong, because we survived, we endured, we kept going even when we wanted to give up. That strength doesn't disappear when the abuse ends. It stays with us. It helps us heal. It turns us into advocates and warriors and survivors who can help others find their own strength. So if you're living in fear right now, please know that you have that strength inside you too. You might not feel it yet. You might feel weak and broken and defeated. But you're not. You're surviving the unsurvivable. And when you're ready, when you find the courage to take that first step toward freedom, that strength will carry you through. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be loved gently, kindly, without fear or violence. You deserve to make your own choices, have your own opinions, live your own life. You deserve to wake up without dread in your stomach. You deserve peace. Don't let anyone, especially not the person hurting you, convince you otherwise. That doctor's decision to look closely at my injuries instead of accepting the lie Marcus told him that saved my life. His refusal to turn a blind eye, his willingness to ask the hard questions, his commitment to following protocol that gave me the chance to finally tell the truth, and that truth set me free. So I'm asking you, if you're in danger, to give yourself that same chance. Tell someone, ask for help. Take that terrifying first step toward freedom. Thank you for watching my story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing survivors. If this video resonated with you, if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please share it. Hit that like button so more people can find this story. Subscribe to this channel for more survival stories and resources. And please, comment below with words of encouragement for anyone going through this. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know we believe them. Let them know help is available. Together, we can break the cycle of domestic violence. Together, we can save lives. Together, we are stronger than any abuser. Stay safe, everyone, and remember you are worth saving. Your life matters. You deserve peace. Thank you.